I'm Jamie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing episode 7 of series 18 of Taskmaster, and again I think this was a pretty good episode. I think it's a really strong season so far. First of all, with this episode I want to say how I love Andy is dressed as a Roman soldier. I think it's so good. I love it when a contestant kind of like goes all out with outfits and costumes and stuff. I think it's really fun. So yeah, that is a major plus in my books. Starting off with the prize task, and the prize task this time was to bring in an item bigger than your head that you would want to carry around if you were forced to carry an item around for the rest of your life. So this I think was a good category and challenging as well, because you had to think about size and also something that wouldn't be that inconvenient to carry, or at least would have a use to it. Rosie's I thought was quite strong starting off, and this is a paper mache version of Greg's head. And I like, it's kind of easier to carry around than some things with it just being on your head, but then obviously vision wise you probably wouldn't be able to see, but I'm not really thinking about like the practicalities of each item, but I thought this was really amazing. I love it, like the creativity behind it. I thought it was so good. And I liked her argument that wearing it on her head would open doors for her, like career-wise, because everyone would think she was Greg, which I thought was really funny. So this one was really good, lots of effort put into this and really funny. Next up is Baba, and he brought in a subwoofer speaker, and I liked how like genuinely passionate and into it he was. I thought it was really nice. This I think is the most inconvenient to carry around, probably just because of how big it looked. But yeah, I liked his idea as like, he just wants to listen to music. If he's got to carry something awkward around for the rest of his life, it may as well be something that brings you joy, like music. So I like that argument to it, but I don't think it was the strongest. But I guess it is a decent prize to win as well, so that's quite good. Emma's I adored. I thought this was so good. This is a hat that had inbuilt moisturiser in it. I liked her reasoning with this. With that is she wanted something that would look good and also be practical and serve a purpose. And I thought she did a really good job. The hat was quite a cool hat, and I liked the moisturiser within it, and her argument saying like, oh, I'm like very dry, so I like to moisturise. So yeah, very practical, and I just thought it was genuinely quite cool, and I liked the inventiveness and creativeness behind it. So yeah, this one definitely 5 points in my opinion. Next up is Jack, and he brought in a ukulele, a guitar, and he was saying he's like a singer-songwriter, and he wrote a song, and I thought the song was pretty good. Again, it's some creativity there as well, and singing it in the studio, I just thought it was all quite sweet. And I guess his thing was that he having the ukulele, having the guitar about would be it's just something nice to carry around. It's not something too inconvenient, and also can just like bring some fun moments as well. A good amount of effort in this. And Andy's was a rhinoceros head that fires cricket balls out of its mouth, and just madness, and I loved it. I thought it was so good. The video of it was really funny. And again, I'm not sure if he made this or we just bought it. I don't know where you'd buy that from. But this I thought was really fun, and I liked, he was bringing his cricket love for cricket into it, which I thought was quite nice. But a really, really fun prize. And I definitely agree with how Greg scored this. I thought it was very, very strong in terms of all their attempts. And yeah, very competitive. So he gave nobody 1 point, which I think is very fair. He gave 2 to Baba, 3 to Jack, 4 to Rosie and Andy, and then 5 points to Emma, and I completely agree with that. The first task was to ring the bell. They had 9 ropes in front of them, and it was fewest ropes pulled wins, and they had 10 minutes max to do this task. And I thought this was quite a good one. I liked that they weren't allowed to look up, weren't allowed to inspect what was in the things that would fall down. I thought that was quite good. I really liked all the little tricks that they had in this. They had quite a few. One was having the number 5 in replacing an S in the task. So people would think, oh, I've got to pull the 5th rope. That obviously makes people think about the ropes, because obviously, as we know, that the ropes had actually nothing to do with it. You didn't have to pull a rope to ring the bell. So having that 5 in there automatically makes them think, associate back to the ropes, even though it's written in the task saying they have to pull the ropes, but they might think, oh, I could just ring a different bell. But then I think that draws the attention back to the ropes, if that makes sense. Andy's attempt was probably the worst way that you could do this, unfortunately for him. He just pulled all of the ropes, and there were lots of little tricks and hints in there as well, saying oh, have you tried number 8, which I thought was quite funny. So obviously, again, insisting that you have to pull the ropes, keep pulling the ropes, do this one instead, which I thought was really, really good. It just makes you kind of second guess yourself and think, oh, I've got to keep going, I can't give up now. And and he just went through every single rope. He didn't really think outside the box in any way. Once he pulled all of them. Not sure how much time he had to think elsewhere. Perhaps he thought there were little clues to follow to lead somewhere else or something like that. Because he was looking at all the little things that were inside. He had a few close calls of figuring out that it didn't have anything to do with the rope, saying, why don't I just ring somebody with the surname Bell? And also questioning whether or not the ropes had anything to do with it. So it's annoying for him that he didn't think on that a bit more and think, oh, why don't I just do that and ring a different bell or something. I think if he had rang a person with a surname Bell, then that would have counted as well. But unfortunately, he didn't ring any bell at all, so he got 0 points in this task. I loved the contrasting attempts between Bubba and Jack. Jack being very nonchalant, pulling everything, and Bubba being very scared to pull anything. I think the pairing between those two was very, very good. I liked Jack's attempt. I thought it was quite funny where he just gave up on the fact that I'm not going to try and be smart about it. It's a game of luck. It's no skill involved. So I'm just going to pull them all and see what happens. And I think that was a fairly decent approach, apart from the fact that he did pull all of the ropes. But I think because he did it so quickly, he had time afterwards to then think about it a bit more, and eventually did find a bell in the glamping pod. So yeah, it worked in his favour, but not terrifically in his favour. Yeah, and unfortunately he got wet by the blue. But I definitely agree with his reasoning where it's there's nothing here straight away to give you any hints, so just go for it. There's no skill involved. As I said, I loved how Bubba was so scared to pull anything, but he eventually did, I think, warm up to it, and I think he did quite enjoy it. And again, he found the trick by ringing the doorbell, which I thought was quite good. I loved the running joke in this episode about Bubba signing up for the wrong show. I thought it was really funny, and I really like Bubba in this series. I think his character is really fun, and I think it's just contrasting very well with people who perhaps are really into the show, have watched it loads and are really competitive and will do anything, where he's scared to pull the ropes. I just think it's a really wonderful contrast to the others. Then we had Emma and Rosie, and both were really quick to figure out that you don't need to pull the ropes. Emma, I thought, even though her zooming out by walking backwards was a bit silly, I liked her idea of trying to basically trying to see what was on top, to see if there was any hints that way. Because I think by saying don't look up, it implies that there's perhaps going to be things that give it away. So I definitely agree with her approach, although the zooming out was a bit weird, as I said. She did only pull one rope in the end, which was really good, and then it found a bell in the walkway and was able to ring that. So yeah, an excellent attempt from Emma, but not as excellent as Rosie's. And I know they made fun of it in the studio, but I think her shaking the ropes was a good idea, because if you've shaken it, surely the bell, you might be able to hear the bell and then think, right, that's the one I'm going to pull. So I think it was a good tactic. I thought it was a really clever way of thinking. I thought it was a good workaround. You're not pulling the rope, you're shaking it to and I thought it was just a really good way of perhaps getting a little hint. And it worked for her because she realised that none of them were making any noise, and also they didn't feel like they'd have a bell in it. And yeah, she saw the doorbell and rang the doorbell, and I thought it was so quick and just, yeah, such a good attempt. So obviously Rosie got 5 points, Emma got 4, Jack and Bubba got 3, and unfortunately Andy didn't get any points. Overall, I thought this was a really good task. It feels very early Taskmaster to me. I think it's quite simple. It's got a fun twist with it not being anything to do with the ropes. People have, Jack got water splashed on him, so that's quite funny, and I think everybody's approach to the task was really good as well. You had those really ingenious moments from Rosie and Emma, and you also had them also being very silly with zooming out and Bubba being scared of the rope. So I thought it was a really good task. Next up we had a team task, and Rosie has decided to use her hot dog joker. She's wearing the hot dog costume, and I did like her reasoning for this. I think going for a team task is a good idea because you've got somebody else to work with you, and obviously they're going to want to win points as well. If it's a category that you're perhaps weaker in, thinking oh, I'm not very good at creative ones, and you're paired with somebody who might be, they can, your strengths and weaknesses should hopefully be able to work together, and you can use each other's strengths and get more points. So I definitely think using the hot dog joker in a team task is a good idea. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out for Rosie, but I don't think that was her fault at all. For the actual task, they had to work out what was in the box. Only Jack and Andy were able to see what was in the box. The other teammates weren't allowed to. They couldn't open the box, tamper with it with any way, and they had to ask Andy or Jack, depending on what team they're on, questions as to trying to work out what was in it. So I think this is a good task. We've had similar ones before, I think, or maybe in a New Zealand one or Australian one, I can't remember. But I feel like we've had something similar to this, slightly different. But in this, Andy and Jack could only make silent facial expressions. They couldn't nod or shake their heads or anything like that, and they could only talk when Alex asks them a question. This was obviously made more difficult by the addition of a secret task for Andy and Jack, where they were told they had to lie continuously through this task, and every time they told the truth, a point was docked for their team, which I think is a really difficult challenge. You obviously would want to help them in that task, but then not want to, because then you'd lose points. I thought it was very challenging, and I really enjoyed this like double tasks together. I thought it was really smart and really entertaining as well. So we saw the team of three's attempt first. I really liked how they established very early on like a yes or no answer. Sticking out your tongue meant yes, not sticking out your tongue meant no. And I obviously think that's the way to go, otherwise it's going to be too difficult. And Emma figuring out Andy was lying was amazing. She was a proper detective in this. I loved them figuring it out through Andy not knowing what velvet was. I think it was so good. I think Andy did a really good job as well. Emma's questions were really good, and I think Alex definitely played into their hands by asking Andy if he knew what velvet was. He was also immediately like caught in a lie by them asking if they were figurines of them, and obviously he said yes, and so they were asking Alex to stop the clock. We figured out what it is. So I think that paired with Andy not knowing what velvet is, or saying he doesn't know what velvet is, definitely flicked that switch in Emma's head. And I thought it was so good. Her reaction to it was incredible. However, from that, it was a very long process to get to the answer. And I definitely feel that they could have asked better questions. For example, they were asking, is it an orange? Is it a leek? Is it a pea? Whereas they could have asked, is it a fruit? Or then like, is it a vegetable? And at least narrowed it down to the food type rather than just guessing random foods. So yeah, they definitely could have asked better questions and narrowed it down in a better way rather than just thinking of random things to ask. So yeah, that probably wasn't the smartest thing, and I can't even remember how it was done, like how it was judged, whether it was time-based or number of questions. But yeah, they asked 116 questions or had 116 guesses, which is just madness. They did eventually figure out that it was 1 lemon and a £5 note, and I can't imagine the relief from that after they figured it out. And I think it is absolutely amazing that Andy didn't tell the truth once. I think he did such a good job. I think, yeah, he was very careful with his answers. Even when like Alex was talking to him and with everything, he was very, very good with his answers. So I absolutely loved it. I thought, yeah, he just did a fantastic job. And then we had the team of two. Yeah, Rosie was so unlucky with this. As I said, I think it was a good idea on a team task, but yeah, it just did not work out in her favour. There were lots of reasons for this. Jack immediately used noise in his answers. It's very clear in the instructions that it had to be silent facial expressions. I'm surprised Alex didn't point it out earlier. I mean, the fact that he broke that rule straight away is like madness. He was definitely telling the truth, or at least like telling half-truths, saying, oh, she's definitely going to get the items right, so basically telling her there's more than one, which I didn't think was quite smart if it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't tell the truth. So yeah, little things like that I think he just perhaps didn't think about. As I said, I think he forgot the rules of the actual team task as well as forgetting to lie. I mean, his argument was that you can't lie with facial expressions, which I disagree with, because you definitely can. I can only think of like one point in his attempt that we were shown that he actually lied. Yeah, so many things. He was nodding and shaking his head. He made so many noises, and like the laughter, I think if it was just he couldn't speak, I think the laughter would be a good workaround, but yeah, he couldn't just make any noise. And then obviously there's the question about whether or not Rosie's, because they were negative points, whether or not the negative points get doubled. I do agree with the fact that they shouldn't. I think it is just a bit unfair, and I think it is very, very rare that they would have a negative points, like a deduction, because I think this has only happened like a few times where you've lost points in the show, so I just think, I think it's just safe to say that they shouldn't have negative points doubled. You should only have your points doubled. And also, there were like 2 separate tasks as well. In her team task, they just got disqualified, so she got 0 points. It was in the separate task that they got -3. But on the -3, I think they both got very lucky that it was only -3. I think they were very generous with that, because I think they probably could have added those points up a lot more. I think there's definitely more than 3 times that Jack told the truth. So yeah, I think they did get lucky with that. The last proper task in this episode was to eat and obey 5 fortune cookies, and the fastest wins. I think this is a really good task. We've had similar ones before, but I really enjoy the format of this, where you've just got to do 5 different things, and obviously there's things being like start again, you've got to do disgusting things. So yeah, this I think is again kind of like a classic task. Or at least one that they've done different versions of it before. We had Rosie and Baba paired together to start off with, and they definitely had the worst time with this. I love Rosie eating the paper straight away. Like, it just always happens with fortune cookies. But yeah, they had some horrible things, putting them in hot salty water, which, yeah, just the sogginess of it is horrible enough. But yeah, they're really salty. They're putting it into very, very spicy hot sauce, which, yeah, I couldn't have done that at all. I'm like all right with spice, but I could never do things like that. That's just awful. Baba again got the hot sauce one, but he got it in vinegar. I don't know what's worse, the vinegar or the salty water. Another one he got was they had to start all over again. Luckily, he got that quite early on in his attempt. But obviously we see later on that somebody doesn't get so lucky with that one. It seemed genuinely horrible for both of them, Rosie especially, with having to close one eye and then crying, and yeah, just very horrible task, and I felt bad for them, but it was funny. But to be fair to Rosie, she did do it quite quickly, especially compared to Baba. Like, she got middle points in the end, which I think was very, very impressive. But I guess you would just want it over with at that point, when you're just crying and eating hot sauce continuously. Emma also had some pretty horrible things, like she had to do the salty water one, but some of the other ones that she had, I think, were fairly easy. Again, it just added time, so they're saying yes for 30 seconds. They're just things that really add to your time. They're not really that difficult to do. It just makes your time a bit longer. I think, Emma did a really good job. She won this task, but yeah, she just flew through it. She did a really, really good job. I loved the little thing at the end when she was saying stop the clock. Just really funny. And yeah, I just love that she ate the paper as well, like Rosie did. Jack also had a really good run with this. He had the laugh for 30 seconds, the say yes for 30 seconds, and the going and getting the medallion. But he also had the hot sauce one, and he had a really good workaround where he said that it doesn't say I have to do it now, I'll do the hot sauce at the end. So yeah, didn't have to eat any hot sauce, so good for him. I bet Baba and Rosie wish they thought of that. But yeah, I thought that was a really good workaround. And finally in this task we had Andy, and Andy again had a really good approach. Realised he didn't need to do the tasks in the order like they were opened. He could just open 5, do 5 tasks, and then eat the fortune cookies. So I thought that was really, really, like, a really good idea. But unfortunately, after he'd made a decent dent in his attempt, he got the start all over again. So not very good for him, but he had some good attempts with the actual things, like he still was eating hot sauce at some points. We had to go get some milk. Yeah, as they pointed out in the studio, his saying yes for 30 seconds, trying to do it in one long yes, really funny. The do it all over again, I think, is just brutal. I mean, not as brutal as the hot sauce, but having to do it all over again after you've done so much already, it would just feel so bad. And then we had the studio task, and I thought the studio task was quite fun. It was to throw a beanbag onto the island, and you weren't allowed to knock over any cans, and if you were off the island, then you also got disqualified. You got disqualified if you knocked over any cans, and it was last player standing wins. It wasn't winner takes all, so that's a plus in my books. You had to throw 1 on your first attempt and then 2 on your second, and so on and so on. We only got to 2 attempts, but I did think it was quite tricky. I mean, the fact that 3 people got disqualified on the first round just shows how difficult it was. Emma, Rosie and Jack all got disqualified on the first round. Andy was really smart by finding that one space that was seemingly like empty, like emptier than everything else, so you had a bigger target to aim for, so that was really smart. And obviously Baba caught on as well and did the same. Andy and Baba got to do it again where they had to throw 2. Andy sailed through his, but Baba knocked the cans over on his second attempt, which is such a shame. It would have been fun to see them try and do it 3 times. So Andy won the studio task, but Emma won the overall episode, which is her second win. I wonder if we'll have like a win for 2 wins for everybody. That would be quite fun. But overall, this was quite a fun episode. I think obviously there was the whole hot dog thing with Rosie that was very unfortunate, but I liked the running jokes that we had afterwards of like Jack and Rosie not being friends anymore, like Rosie being annoyed at Jack and calling him like a grandpa, and oh, you can be smart when you want to be smart. Just so many good moments in that. I did feel bad for both Rosie and Jack in that because, Jack did mess up, and unfortunately it was quite bad for Rosie that he did. But as I said, I loved all the drama around that, like Emma wanting to dock 6 points. I thought that was really funny, especially because like she's not the most competitive. Like I wouldn't have been surprised if Andy said that, but the fact it was Emma who was like, yeah, dock 6 points. Just really, really funny. And I love the studio environment in the season is really, really strong. So that means in terms of the hot dog costume, we still have 2 left to play their Joker, and that's Emma and Andy. I'm convinced that Andy's going to use his in a studio task just because he keeps wearing costumes in the studio, but he could do it in a different task obviously as well. We've still got 3 more episodes left. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like, it really helps the channel, and comment down below your thoughts on this episode. Do you think Rosie should have got docked 6 points, or do you think 3 is fair enough? Personally, I don't think a hot dog Joker should double the minus points, but I do think Jack and Rosie both got off lightly with them only saying that Jack lied 3 times, whereas I think it was probably more than that. But yeah, that is my opinion. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. Subscribe if you want to see more videos to do with Taskmaster. I'll have some more out for you soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!